What happens when science meets spirituality and when atheist has near-death experience? Well, we will find out because the near-death experience reawakened his first sense. I am super excited to have our today's guest, Ray Catania. Hopefully I'm pronouncing the last name correct. And I will just read his bio so I don't miss anything. Ray is a metaphysical teacher, master certified life coach, and award-winning author whose work bridges science and spirituality. He's passionate about helping people to get unstuck, tap into the power of their mind, and create the life they truly deserve. Ray's first book, The Atheist and the Afterlife, tells the story of his own spiritual awakening, while his follow-up, You Are Still Alive, Now Act Like It, offers a practical tools and insights to help others on their journey. He also is postgraduate in metaphysics and pursuing his PhD in metaphysical psychology. And he is an ordained minister, a master Usui Reiki instructor, and certified meditation instructor. At the heart of his work and his intuitive ability to help people move past trauma and self-doubt to find lasting inner peace. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. First of all, everybody wants to know what is it about the near-death experience and all the sudden changes and perspective on life. When I had clients and they came in with these kind of experiences, they would share that it was very hard to get back into society. It's kind of like you get infused with this love that our world is not ready for it yet. It's like the one client would say, I had this feeling like, I love everybody. Here's my purse. You want some money? Go ahead. Just you can have it all. I don't care. But that is really hard because you have to somehow still pay the bills after that.
Yeah.
And then you probably going through the questions like, why we all not have that feeling? What would you say to that?
So I had my NDE at an early age. I was only 20 years old when I had it. And before that, I was a very confused young person. I grew up in a home that had a lot of trauma, drama, fighting, yelling, all the things that you probably don't want to have growing up. But so my family was Catholic, and so I was brought up that way. But being brought up, the things that I was taught, it didn't really match up with my life. And in other words, what loving God would allow these things to happen to a child? Why am I seeing what I'm seeing? Why am I here? It just didn't make sense to me, and I rebelled against it. So I went all the way to the other side, and that was atheism. And I probably didn't even know what that meant, but I knew that I was rebelling against my parents and going as far to the other side as I possibly could. So I would define myself as an atheist and believing in nothing. And still living at home at the age of 20, there is a fire in my home, and the kitchen was on the first floor, obviously, and the second floor was my bedroom, and my bedroom was directly above the kitchen. So the way the fire started, it was the stove, and there was a gas leak, and the gas was natural gas, and it was rising up into my room while I was sleeping overnight. So in the morning, my mother got up, and I guess she turned the stove on to make breakfast or what have you. And there was a ball of flames. The wall caught fire, and there was smoke, and it was relatively small. They have these emergency shut-off valves that are built into the stoves. So it wasn't the fire, and it wasn't the smoke. That was put out pretty quickly by my parents. It was the gas. I was inhaling gas fumes for hours and hours. So I hear the police and the fire trucks, and I hear all this commotion that's going on downstairs, and I don't know what's happening, but it wakes me up. And I try to get out of the bed. And here's the first sign that something is seriously wrong. I find that I can't move my legs. I can't even feel them. I couldn't lift my head off the pillow. It felt like it just weighed 1,000 pounds. I couldn't yell. Just parts of my body were completely paralyzed. And obviously, I knew something was seriously wrong, and I'm hearing the commotion, but I don't know what's happening yet. So my right arm worked well, my left so, but I was trying to pull myself to the edge of the bed. And I would kind of pull myself a little bit, and then I would pass out, and then something would wake me up again, and I would pull myself a little more, and then I would pass out. And this went on a few times. And finally, I knew that if I didn't get out of that bed, I was dead. And I gave it everything I had, and I just pulled and pulled, and I tumbled out of the bed, and I hit face first. Now, when you get hit, there's that initial shock before the pain, right? Before the pain sets in. Well, there was the shock, and I was kind of waiting for the pain, but it never came. There was no pain. And that's because I wasn't in that body anymore. I was above it, and I was in the adjacent corner, and I was looking down at my body, my lifeless body on the floor. Now, you would think that I would be petrified, but I wasn't. For some reason, I wasn't scared at all. In fact, I felt amazing. I mean, it was a beautiful feeling. It was a euphoric feeling, and everything was more vivid. And adjacent to me in the opposite corner is a huge cone-shaped white light. And calling this a white light is just really doing it a disservice, because this is not a light. I don't know how to explain what this is, but this light is love, is peace, is calm, is painlessness, is euphoria. It is all things that are beautiful. And I was a part of the light. The light is shining on my energetic self, not my dead self, my energetic self. And I was one with the light. I was a part of it. And it was tunnel like, and I wanted to go into the tunnel. And at the end of the light, there was a being who said, "It's okay, Ray. It's okay to come into the light." And I was like, wow, it knows my name. And I started to proceed into the light. As I went in a little further and a little further, the euphoria increased. And I was like, this is amazing. I can't wait to get to the other side. I want to see what's on the other side. And I'm starting to travel through. And as I do that, the door bursts in. My father had kicked in the door, seen me on the floor, scooped me up, and was screaming for the paramedics. Now, this man was distraught. He was yelling, screaming, "Help my son, help my son." And, we didn't have a good relationship. So I never really saw him that way. I didn't really know how he felt about me. It was always anger, anger, anger. And to see him holding me, hugging me, and crying, I was like, he loves me. And I longed for that my whole life. He's probably hugged me 5 times in my entire life, and one of them is when I'm dead. So that's what it took for me to see that, unfortunately. But I wanted that. And so I asked the being at the end of the light if I could go back. And I don't know if that's why I was allowed to go back. I have no idea. But I did wake up, and I was no longer in his arms, no longer in the room. I was downstairs in the living room floor, kind of laid out, and all the paramedics were doing whatever they were doing to me. And I wake up, and I still feel the euphoria. I mean, I feel fantastic. And I'm trying to tell these guys, like, stop. I'm good. I'm great. I feel great. I've never felt better.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Kid, you have no idea. You are not well. Okay, you're going to the hospital." And I was like, well, did you hear the voice? Did you see the light? Did anybody see that? Are you guys, anybody else? And then they start looking at me like, okay, they're looking at each other. This guy's crazy, right? So I just shut up. I didn't say another word about it, and let them do what they had to do and take me to the hospital. Now, being 20 and trying to process this is impossible. There's no computers, there's no cell phones, none of that is invented yet. And I have nowhere to take this. I told my mother, she told me it didn't happen. I told somebody else, they said it didn't happen. Anybody that I told, they just said, "You're crazy. That didn't happen." They didn't believe it. So I shut it down. I completely shut it down, wouldn't address it, put it in a box. It was the only way I knew how to deal with it, was to not deal with it. And it made it easier, I guess, in the moment. but it was very confusing because I know what I saw and I know what I felt. And it was the most amazing day of my life. And I have to shut it up, box it up, put it away, and I can't talk about it because everybody thinks I'm crazy. So it was a very confusing time for me, a very
Do you
confusing time.
think, as I'm listening to you, I have this understanding that, I was listening to your other podcast that you have shared as a little boy, you had been spending a lot of time alone. You had pretty much, like you said, meditated, didn't even know you were meditating, kind of escaping really to the spirit world more so than the human world. So do you think that this near death experience or out of body experience, both of them actually could be correct, was kind of like wake you up to be now human, because then you start questioning these questions that before there was no questions for you, had probably not even had interest that much in the human world. That world between your ears were much more interesting, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of
Yeah.
like spirits like, well, let's just wake him up a little bit, just put a little bit of gas in his house, just knock him out, like he's going to have some questions, and keep him busy to live the human life.
Pretty much. That's pretty accurate. So, going through that childhood, to avoid the fighting that was going on in the house, I would hide in a closet, under the bed, in the yard, wherever I could get away from it. And I would just hide. And again, no computers, no phones, no games, no toys, no nothing, just me and a wall. And I would just stare at the wall. And I wanted to escape my reality. I would cover my ears and close my eyes and try to, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. What happens is I've later learned in life that when we go through repetitive trauma over and over, or even it doesn't have to be repetitive, when it's a severe enough trauma, the mind wants to go elsewhere. It doesn't want to be in that situation, and it will fight to get out of the situation. There's been experiences where someone's getting beaten to death, and at a certain point, they claim that they're not in their bodies anymore. They have left their bodies, and they're watching what's happening to the body. They surrender to what they cannot control, and they're no longer there, and they're not feeling it. Of course, when they return, it's going to be quite painful. And I've even had that experience, but in that moment, you're pushing and pushing and pushing for a different reality. And I kind of achieved that, not knowing what I was doing. I had no idea. I was very young, single digits, 7, 8, 9 years old. But I was pushing through the veil and getting to the other side. So I make jokes. I had imaginary friends that could actually answer me. I mentioned that one time, and then it was, oh my God, it was like I was the Antichrist. So I didn't bring that up again. So every time I've had these experiences, I've always been told I'm crazy. So I learned to just keep them to myself.
So did you had another NDA later on?
I had an
Or
out of
did
body. The
out
second
of
one was
body?
more of an out of body.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I didn't actually die that
Yeah.
time.
So how did you go in life? Was it like really hard then to see the life the same way? Did you felt like your consciousness had lifted up at that moment and you saw people differently? Let's say your parents, so you had more compassion? Because that's one of the side effects that well, it's a good side effect to have, but it's kind of almost like a curse too, because there's not very many people with that consciousness around you, right?
That's the biggest problem. You have no one to go to, or at least I didn't have anybody to go to. And that's why I kept it bottled up and I didn't understand it. But here's what I did understand: I didn't fear death anymore. So now I'm a 20-something-year-old kid who doesn't fear death, comes from a violent environment. So I have no regard for my life. I don't really care if I live or die. I don't have anyone dependent on me. I don't have children. I don't have a wife. And I live my life very, very recklessly during that time. And I don't talk about the incident, but in the back of my mind, I know what I saw and felt, and I know that that was very real. So, but I don't fear death, because what's the worst that's going to happen? I go back to the light. And that's when I got myself into situations where I was nearly beaten to death and things like that. And as stupid as that was, I didn't fear the death because I'm going into that light and I know how beautiful it is, and I'm okay with that.
No, it's a wonderful to actually take away the most fearful thing that people fear, which is death. I'm constantly talking about it. It's like, it's inevitable. It's just like birth, death is the same thing. It's just, can we just, if we educate our children about it early on,
Yeah.
we would spare them from so much suffering. And
Yes.
there's just, we can talk about that for hours. But how do you bridge the gap between science and spirituality in your work? Like, how do you bring those experience in your daily life? And
So first I had to accept that, I had to start accepting that what I was feeling and seeing was real. And then I started to educate myself. And the first thing that transpired was I got married around the age of 30, young 30s, and I had two kids. And once I had those children, my boys that I willed into this world, I was one of two boys, and I wanted to have two boys, and I did. And I owed it to them to completely clean up my act, so to speak. Went back to college, got a great job, did everything I was supposed to do. Never drank again or did anything like, never used drugs. I was using tons of everything. I was just living a reckless lifestyle. But when they came into my life, all that stopped. I now had a reason for living. And I do fear death a little bit now because I don't want to leave them. Right. So my perception changes. And although unfortunately my marriage fell apart very early on, it was only a couple of years, I still had those kids. And I was going to give them everything that I could possibly give them, all the things I didn't have. They were never going to see anger. They were never going to see violence. I did years of therapy and whatnot.
like
And
Buddha.
everything I could do. But I still never processed those earlier days. I never processed the NDE. So it wasn't until much later in my life, probably late 40s or so, and I decide I'm going to date again. My children are a little bit older, and I figure, okay, I don't know if I did the right thing, but I waited until they were old enough to understand. And I met a woman. I went online because at that time, that's how we meet people now, right? So I was going through the different websites, and I came to this one site, and I'll never forget it. She was the third one down on the right side. They show you some people to get you to join the site, and I saw her, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's my wife." Like, I know her. I don't know how I know her, and I don't mean I know her like I met her someplace. I know her.
Mhm.
We've been married
Oh.
before. That's how it felt. So I emailed her and I told her, and as crazy as that is, I only wrote one email. It was just to her. And I said, this is going to sound crazy, but you're my wife. You just don't know this yet. But if you have dinner with me, I'll explain the whole thing. And she responded with, LOL, you're out of your mind. And I said, I know, everybody tells me that, but we did have dinner, and we are still here, and we are together, and she's definitely my soulmate. And she opened my eyes to that spiritual side. That the things that were missing. She was very open to it. And when I met her, I started to have more premonitions. Things became more prominent. And when I told her, I didn't get a response that I thought I was going to get. And by the way, she's a doctor of psychology. So try explaining these things that can't be seen to a doctor of psychology. I thought she was just going to, kick me to the curb and say, never call me again. Here's a doctor who can help you with your mental disability. Right. But no, this is how I know she's my soulmate. She was like, maybe, you have these abilities. Maybe you're a psychic medium and you don't know it. And I was like, well, what is that? I don't even know what that is. And she says, well, let's go meet one. There's one that I was going to go see. My father comes through often, and you guys can compare notes. And I was like, I was at the end of my rope. I thought I was crazy. At this point in time, I'm buying into what everyone is telling me. You're crazy. So at that point, I had nothing to lose, and I met with the medium. And I told her what I saw and how it happens. And I told her about the chills and the vibrations and how I see things and the movie screen that opens up. And she's like, stop. And I was like, what? She goes, that's exactly the way I see things too. And I was like, wow, so this is real? And she's like, yeah, it's real. And it was from that moment forward that I dove into educating myself everything I could. I went back to school for metaphysics, got my master's. I'm about to complete my PhD. And I started working with mentors who were psychics, who were mediums, who were spiritual teachers, who were shaman. Started traveling, quit my day job, which was crazy because I had the best job ever. And I just walked away from it. Again, like you said, money, what, who cares? You're just, you're in another world now, right? And that's what I did. I did that for, 8 years, 8+ years. And I started to, and I loved physics. This is a big point. I loved science, always loved science. So being a huge skeptic myself, I had to find some sort of plausible scientific theory that would at least help me understand these abilities, these things that I was able to see and know and whatnot. And that led me down a path of learning just that. And I started to write about it. And those are the two books. The first book, The Atheist and the Afterlife, talks about how I learned that this exists. And the second book, You're Still Alive, Don't Act Like It. Now act like it, rather. Don't act like it. Now act like it. Actual techniques and things that I used. And I explain the scientific theory the way I see it behind those things. So I put it in a model that other people could look at, understand, and replicate. And that was my goal.
So science, Dr. Bruce Lipton said, science is the art of explanation. And so we seek in these explanations to somehow soothe our soul, right? Like it's like our soul is like talking to us, right? Like, hey, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And the
Yes.
mind goes, I don't understand what's happening. So the
Right.
science just name things for us so we can put it in some kind of a category. So we can like be in peace,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah.
it's it's like the language of the soul does not need words. Our intellect does, our ego does. So we do not, like you said, go crazy. So you help people in your practice to name things, what they're going through, and explain them. That is not that scary. Is it kind of like what do you do?
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yes. We have the ego, which is based in what we think is reality, right? Our five physical senses. And then we have our awareness, which is connected to the collective consciousness, right? Like Carl Jung taught us. And it's these two different, completely different belief systems that we have going on within us. But when you learn to merge those and you come to a place where you can accept both. And I stopped listening to my ego and I started listening to my awareness. The ego has its benefits, right? It's not perfect. It's far from perfect, right? But it has its benefits where it's there to protect us. It'll say, look both ways before you cross the street. That's good advice. Okay. We need that. But it'll also say, you're not good enough. You shouldn't have said that. You look like an idiot now. How could you think this was a good idea? Blah, 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 blah. So it insults us, it puts us down, and it tries to protect us from doing anything that might hurt us. That includes hurting our emotions. Our awareness, on the other hand, that's our direct connection to higher source. Now, if you take your information from there instead of getting it from the ego, your whole life changes. And that is what I try to teach everybody.
Yeah, so it's the ego sees everything in duality. It's a good, bad, it's black, white, it's Democrat, Republican, it's female, male. It's always have these polarization that it has to be one way or another. And then the soul doesn't understand that. It is like, no, we are all one. Like you don't need to have this or that. It's this and that.
Mm.
That's so beautiful about it is that we like John Lennon sang, right? Let it be. Like it's just all is fine. We just have to allow to exist. And if you don't like something, just don't participate in it. Just bring awareness to it and then
Right.
just look at it as observer and then let it go and just create your own thing, what you want to do. But the ego is, like you were saying, tries to find some kind of a purpose. So it brings us down to earth and I feel like your children brought you into more humanness and like to anchors to make sure that you don't fly away with your spirituality, and then you actually bringing the spiritually down to them, like you becoming a better human. Because when people say "Oh, I'm spiritual." I'm like, of course you are. You have a spirit. Of course you are. If you wouldn't, you'd be dead. However, spirituality to me is, how can I be a better human today?
Yeah.
That's really what it is. It's just being aware that what do you have gain with that soul would be beneficial on earth.
Yeah, well said. I never even looked at it that way, but that's a great way of looking at it. They kind of grounded me and made me change the things that I was doing that were harming myself on this earth. And at the same time, allowed me to take that look at my soul, my spirit, and find something that was always there, trying to pull me the whole time, trying to say, Ray, pay attention. Ray, pay attention. How many times do we have to do this to you?
Yes, and when you look at a children, especially in the younger age, before they start talking back to us, it's the literally the God in them looking at you, and they love
Mm.
you unconditionally. I still can't get over it. Doesn't matter what you say, what you do, they have 100% forgiveness at all times. It is just humbling as adults. Like we think we know it, know it all. No, we don't. Like
Mm.
Jesus says, you need to, if you want to walk through the door to see the Father, you need to be like a child. And it's something to really learn still. We really do not know. Like we can learn from our children how to be. And that's so wonderful that if we are gifted those gifts as a
I told
parents.
I told my kids, you've done more for me
Mhm.
than you could ever imagine. And I feel as though they gave more to me than I did for them.
100%. Yes, that's wonderful. Children are a blessing. So, if we go out of the grounding aspect of your life, you are familiar with the Tesla principle on energy vibration and how that ties to the
Frequency.
spirituality. People
Yeah,
would be interested to hear that because I
sure.
think Tesla is such a hot topic.
He really is. I mean, imagine saying something like that. I think it was 1901 when he said it. If you're looking for the secrets of the universe, look in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And it couldn't be more true. When we start to break down particles and we look at what's inside the atom, we find that it's 99+% space. Well, what's in the space? Energy. What is energy? Energy is on a frequency, right? It vibrates, and everything that vibrates is on a frequency. So your thoughts also are on a frequency. Here, I'll explain. The brain creates the mind, but the mind controls the brain. It also controls your body. Now, the mind is also where thoughts are created, and those thoughts are emitted on a frequency. But we'll use the law of attraction, which is really the law of vibration. It finds a match. So when you really dig into something, when you really want something, if you learn the law of attraction, what you're doing is you're taking your words, turning them into emotions. Those emotions emit a vibration. That frequency goes out and finds its match. And what do we know about frequencies? They lock together. They lock together. It's just like, and a simple example is if I take my phone, my cell phone, and I dial your number, our cell phones connect and we can communicate. We can send information to one another because the frequency aligns. But if the call gets dropped, we can't connect anymore. So the idea is keep that connection, keep emitting what it is that you're looking for, what it is that you want, but it has to come from an emotional place. It's not the words. And that's where this new program that I just came up with, the Say It Three Ways, is about building that emotion. You see, a lot of people will say, well, when you manifest and you affirm something, just say it like, I am wealthy, I am wealthy, I am wealthy, I am wealthy. Well, in the back of my mind, I know that's not true. And I'm not going to convince myself otherwise. But what if I say it like this? I want to be wealthy. I will be wealthy. I am wealthy. And I repeat that over and over and over. What I'm creating is truth. I'm creating conceivability, believability to achievability. I want, I will, I am. And you build it and you send that out repeatedly over and over and over. And what it is that you're looking for is going to find you.
As Rumi says, what you're seeking is seeking you.
That's right.
It's,
Sure.
I feel that your explanation is very helpful. And it's even simpler than that, right? It's just like, if you can embody that I am,
Yeah.
and then the I am question that, who am I? And it's almost like a reverse engineering. And once you know who you really truly are, everything is capable of being manifested.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I don't know why when you were talking, I still seen the images of the kids and babies. How can we bring this principle down to them? Why is it that they come with this high voltage power? They are beaming batteries of love. What happens? Why it happens that they lose it? Like, is it us? Is it the food? Is it the air? Like, what is it? And how can we prevent that from coming and harming them, whatever that, not harming them, but densing them? And I know that they cannot fly around all the time like a 4-year-old. I get that. But how can we somehow harness that energy in them longer for their own sake? Like for me, in my work, I believe intuition is the first sense. And it is the sense that we often, like you even were saying, we often kind of neglect. And it's not about reawakening or finding intuition. It's about reawakening it, like never actually losing it. So if we can teach our children from the beginning how amazing they really are without creating narcissists, it's really tricky. You see, it really is tricky. I probably, we need to dig deeper on that, and I don't think science will help us with that. It's more trial and error as a humans.
Yeah, until we figure it out, it is. I think that's generational, right? That's ancestral in a way, because my parents, they weren't trying to hurt me. They just didn't know any better, right? So they're passing down what they believed from their parents. And after I learned later in life about their childhood, I was like, wow, they really had it bad. So for me to say I had it bad, I didn't have it bad compared to what they had. And it's passed down from generation to generation. And then one generation has to wake up and say, you know what? I'm going to stop this here and now. I'm not going to repeat that. I'm not going to say those things. I'm not going to limit what my children can do by telling them that they're limited. I'm not going to do that. And that's just one very small thing. I'll give you an example of one thing. I was driving. I had one of the little ones in the back, and a car had run the red light on coming this way, and I'm driving straight, and I swerved and swerved, barely got out of the way of the car. And I yelled, you blah, 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 and then continued to drive and didn't say anything again. And the little one in the back said, what happened? And I said, oh, that car almost hit us. And she goes, are you angry? And I said, well, I was angry, but I'm not angry now. And she said, well, why aren't you angry now? And I said, because it happened 2 blocks ago and there's no one trying to hit us. So I don't have to be angry anymore. There's just no reason for it. And she goes, oh, okay. I get that. And they understand that. And unfortunately, my 20-year-old kids didn't get that, Dad.
Well, they say that the first 7 years of life, they are in the theta brainwaves, right?
Yeah.
So it is so important that we all, as a human beings, being aware of it. And even if that child is not yours and you see a little baby, a little child, be aware of it, that they are scanning and downloading everything around them. We should take a responsibility for our action at all times.
Yeah.
All times in front of our children.
And they also don't know what's real and what's not in that theta state, right? So the television becomes a problem, the computer becomes a problem, the phones become problems. So all of those things that they're intaking, they become real for them. I remember when I was about 6 years old, my parents had a bunch of friends over, and I was playing with trucks underneath the table. And the conversation was about fears and phobias. And my mother, when it got to my mother, she said, I am deathly afraid of heights. So my whole life, I said, I'm deathly afraid of heights. I even said it exactly the same way. I didn't even know what heights were.
Yeah.
So when I was 50, my wife and I went to Peru, and I climbed Machu Picchu. And because I was studying with a shaman, and I had to get to the top to get my rights, my healing rights. And I just went right up, had the ceremony. It was the most beautiful thing. Came back down, went to the hotel, and I looked at my wife and I said, "Hey, babe." She goes, "What?" I said, "I'm not afraid of heights. My mother is."
Yeah.
Took me 50 years to figure that out, right? We
Yeah.
carry things that aren't ours because we just don't know the difference.
Yes, I took it the other direction. I have been, for example, insects and things like that, not my favorite. But because I was so aware of it, I was pretending that everything is just so beautiful. So when my kids seen spiders and cockroaches and slimy things, they thought it was the most beautiful thing because I
Mm,
taught them that. Well, now they teenagers and they see a cockroach and they scream like like hyenas. But I think it's their friends now. They can't blame me because I did not
right,
act it like that.
right.
So I know that they'll come back to it. But they were kissing frogs and the whole thing. And it's so wonderful when we actually teach children that nothing is the way you think it is. It's you can totally reframe your mind.
Yes.
Depends how you're looking at it. So there's something that you share with your clients, foundational meditation. And I love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So the foundational meditation works with the different techniques that help us manifest the life that we want to have. It's a meditation that was originally given to me by one of my mentors, but I have changed it so that I've applied the science to it. And as you're going through the meditation, it's a twice a day meditation. And within it, there are different techniques that I use. And the very first one in the meditation is the attitude of gratitude. And what we do at that first part is we state the things that we are most grateful for. And what this does is it changes our mindset, puts us in a place of positivity and thankfulness and gratefulness. This is very important. But if you're going to try to manifest anything, you have to be grateful for the things that you have. It's very important to change your state of mind. I also use very special music that's underneath, but I'll get to that in a moment. The second step is say it three ways. And that's where we're building that emotion. You see, the universe doesn't speak language. It doesn't speak English or French or Japanese or anything else. It just speaks vibration. So you have to turn your thoughts into a vibration. I want, I will, I am. I want, I will, I am. And we chant it over and over and over. This builds that emotion. This builds the intensity until you are getting to a higher level. One of those statements is always going to be your truth. You're never lying to yourself. You either want it, you will have it, or you have it. It's always going to be true. And it's so important. Believability is the key to success in manifestation. The next part of it is visualize with five. Visualizing with five means do a visualization technique with all your five physical senses, but bring them up into the sixth. And when you do that, let's say your manifestation is to acquire a new job. You go into that job and you say it's a desk job, and you're sitting at your desk. And well, what does it feel like to sit there? What does your desk feel like? What does the room smell like? What colors are you looking at? Is there coffee in the conference room? Go taste it. Use every single sense. Shake someone's hand. Use all of them in this visualization process. This enhances it and it makes it past tense. Past tense is a key thing, but you also have to have the I want, I will in order to have the past tense, right? It has to make sense. It has to be believable. And we're bringing it up and bringing it up and sending it out stronger and stronger. And I always start the meditation in a theta state. That is the underlying sound that you'll hear. And then I increase it, and then it comes back down and ends in a theta state with a chant of either ohms or ahs. Since I've designed it this way, I have gotten an 87% success rate. I'll tell you a very quick story about, and I actually did the math because I wanted to know, like, what is the success rate? In the beginning, some people were having success and others were not. And I wanted to find out, what am I missing? Like, what's missing in my meditation? What do I have to give them? And it was the believability. They've got to believe it.
Believe.
See,
Like
my
a
kids,
Tinkerbell, bell, you have to believe.
you got to believe.
Yeah.
My son said to me, why don't you just manifest $1 billion and then we can just all kick back and relax? I said, I have no idea what it's like to be a billionaire. I don't know any billionaires. I've never been in the presence of a billionaire. I can't fake an energy that I don't even know what it feels like. I got to at least be in a room with billionaires to shake their hand and acquire that feeling so I can replicate it. But if
Proximity
I,
is power.
yes, if I don't have anything to go on, I can't believe it. And if I can't believe it, I can't achieve it.
So true. Thank you for saying all that, because the couple things that came to me is that when you were teaching them about the desk office, you also teaching them to be in the present moment, because in order for you to manifest, you have to be 100% in your body with all your senses. And when you taste the coffee or hear the wind, you are actually present, and you are not in the past or in the future. It's not like 30% in the past and 30% in the future. You are 100% here. And the proximity is power. It's very, very important. If you want something, go near it. Be in that vibe. It's so important, because you can, like you said, you can feel the vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. I hope that people who are listening will take you up on it.
I had this one young client who was wanted to go to law school at a very prominent Ivy League school, and he knew it was going to be a challenge. He wasn't a shoo-in by any means. And I said to him, I said, well, the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to drive to the campus the day before or a couple days before. And I just want you to walk around that entire campus. And I want you to go to the room where you're going to take that test. If you can, get as close to it as you can. I want you to take off your shoes and walk on the grass outside and absorb the energy that's there. So when you get there, you know the energy of that school, and you know what that school is looking for. Now, you still have to study. You're not going to get out of studying, okay? Yes. But I want you to have the energy. And if you're going for a job interview, same thing, or a big test, anything at all, get there and absorb the energy. It will increase your chances of success exponentially if you do it that way.
So before we end, what would be the message that you would leave our listeners to help them to trust their first sense, the intuition?
The most important thing is that feeling that you get, and we call it a gut feeling, right? But that's a real feeling that originated, I don't know how many years ago, people started saying gut feeling. Go with your gut, because that is the real feeling. And if you can't identify it, here's what I tell people. The times that you're right, note the feeling that you had right before you were right, and keep noting that feeling. And that's how you'll identify when it's coming from your awareness or when it's coming from the ego. And you'll start to differentiate that. Mm-hmm. Because we want all things to come from our awareness. When we get advice from our awareness, that is pure, that is from source, and that is meant for you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have felt inspired by our conversation to tap into your own first sense, your intuition. It is your first original sense. And please do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss our next episode. Until then, trust yourself, listen within, and keep honoring the wisdom of your soul. Thank you.